Hello everyone, and welcome to our MOCAA making session as part of our WOZA at Home program today. My name is Liesel Hartman, and I work in the Center for Arts Education at the museum. I'm joined by an amazing team today who are going to be involved in our activity, Mandisa and Richard. In the Center for Arts Education, we generally engage in lots of making activities with our different audiences, with children, with teachers, with adults, and different schools and scholars. And we do that making activity in order to bring an understanding to people around the artistic practices of the artists that are on exhibition in the museum. I want to show you a piece that we've done with a group of children, which is what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be making a paper solidarity tapestry, and we're all going to be contributing to this amazing piece. This piece is inspired by the artist Anatsui, and Mandisa is going to speak about two artists that inspire us today. So let me show you this example. On our wall here, we have an example of a paper tapestry made by the Sun Valley Primary School. And what it is really is we spoke about Anatsui's collective making processes, and each of the children made a separate piece, and then they stitched that together and stuck that together to make this wonderful piece out of different pieces of paper, recycled materials, and they got an understanding of Anatsui's collective processes. He's working with other people and some of the thematics which Mandisa will expand upon in a couple of minutes. Today, our making activity is really focused on a moment of reflection. There's been a lot happening at the museum during lockdown and in our various programs. Richard's going to speak about some of those themes that we've been covering and discussing with people across the world over the last couple of weeks. But today, this making process is really about reflecting. It's about thinking about the things that are important in this time, the people that you've connected with, the people that you've relied on for support, and some of the actions that we want to take as individuals and as a community when we think about the notion of radical solidarity.
And as Liesel said, what we do here in the Center for Arts Education is we get together and we come up with programs of activities that can help bring the thoughts to the fore, to think with our hands and to work with the thematics of solidarity, issues that have been troubling everybody. And anybody who's been aware of what's going on in the news has to be aware that there are threads in the society which have come apart and are exposed. And today we're going to hopefully find a way to weave them back together and to show that we're all part of the same society. So the Zeitz MOCAA Museum is located in Cape Town, South Africa, but its project is continental. It's about Africa and about the diaspora and Pan-Africanism and the influence of African contemporary artists. Today, Mandisa is going to tell you about two of our favorite artists who make tapestries, large-scale works, which are really inspiring.
The two artists that we'll be focusing on and whose works we'll be discussing are Anatsui from Ghana and Abdoulaye Konate from Mali. These artists both work in large scale and tapestry-like artworks. These artists highlight issues such as political and environmental affairs, human rights, the transatlantic slave trade, signs and symbols as a means of communication, and language.
So like Liesel said, we're going to be taking an ordinary piece of glossy magazine paper or pamphlet, going through steps of folding, crumpling, making lines, drawing and inking certain strips of it, tearing it up, and we'll end up with a magical section.
Right, folks, now we're going to start with the exciting bit, now that all the talking and explaining has been done, and we're going to get to the making. So Mandisa and Richard showed you that what we're doing tonight is you are making a fragment of a much larger collective piece. So what we're going to be asking you to do in the end, which is really going to mean the success of this project, is to take a picture of your fragment and send it to us so that we can digitally stitch it together to make a collective piece. When we did this activity with large groups of children, each child would have their piece and we would sit around the table. They would make a table piece that consisted of 6 to 8 pieces, and then each table would come together and they put all the table pieces together to make the really beautiful large tapestry. And this is really the nature of both Abdoulaye and Anatsui's making processes, is that they work with other people in order to realize the artistic vision of these wonderful artworks. So, as we said before, we're going to work with paper, and it's about the transformation of that material into something that's really extraordinarily beautiful. So I'm going to put that fragment aside and let us start off with step 1. So if I can just bring that back again. The beauty of this, and when it gets stitched together, is the contrast between light and dark strips that are repeated a number of times, and that creates that beautiful visual pattern, and that's what we want to create here. But if you don't have ink that will allow you to darken the paper, then your choice of paper and the color paper really becomes important. So what I've done here is that I've selected a light sheet of paper, and on this paper you can work with your darker elements like your black koki or dark ink or whatever. If you didn't have darker paper or ink that you can turn into the darker section, you can actually choose a darker or more colorful paper, so that when you put the various pieces together, it creates that beautiful contrast. So Mandisa is going to show you a little bit about how we create these various strips. But what I'm going to show you right now is the very first step. And with this step, we actually want to slow you down. We want you to take your time to do this carefully, okay, to really get the feel of what this material can do and how it transforms in quite a magical way. So our piece of paper, I've got one that I've started here, okay, and we just gently start by scrunching the paper. You're not going to be rough with it, because if you're too rough with it, the paper is actually going to tear. So it's just a gentle scrunching and squeezing motion to actually get that paper to start changing and to mold in your hand. It's the heat of your hand that helps this process to take place, okay? And it's also the firm but gentle action of your hands on the paper. So I've done that in a vertical way. I unravel my paper, okay? It still feels a lot like paper. I'm changing the direction and I'm taking it the other way. I'm very slowly rolling it into a ball, squeezing it very tightly. And what that does is actually it breaks down that glossy film on the paper. And then the paper begins to feel more matte. As you scrunch, you'll see that little tears do form like that. And that's not the end of the world, because that can be sealed with a little bit of tape. Okay, but you don't want huge gaping tears, because those are more difficult to deal with. Okay, so as I'm scrunching, this paper is actually getting warmer in my hand, and if you begin to feel the surface, you can feel that the glossy quality of the paper is also breaking down. It's becoming more matte. It almost has a powdery feel to it as you are scrunching the paper. And you're going to do that now with all 4 of the pieces of paper that you have selected from your magazine. So take a minute, select your paper from your magazine, and you can start the scrumpling process or the scrunching process, or what we sometimes call here worrying the paper to give it a distressed look. Right. Mandisa's busy scrunching her piece over there. And when she's done, she's going to take you to the next step.
So I have my 4 pieces of my scrunched paper. So step 1 of this is you're going to fold your paper into strips. First you fold it half, and you fold it to another half. And as you can see, you have these 4 columns. Now that you've folded your strips, you will then mark using a pen or a corky pen. You'll mark with lines. You're lining your strips, and you will end up with 4 pieces of paper. Do this with the rest of your pieces of paper, and keeping in mind the focus of your words about solidarity. And Richard will take us to our next step.
Okay. Thanks, Mandisa. So now you've got your pieces of paper. We're going to choose one to write your words on. And you might have some darker pieces of paper where you'll be able to see the words that you're writing with your oil pastels. They work better than wax crayons, but you can use a wax crayon. You have to be quite gentle. And you use a light oil pastel to write your words in the lines, in the columns on the paper. So you'll be writing your words here, and if you can't see what's going on, you could write it with a dark color. So it would be solidarity, just for example, and then you can go over it with your white pastel. And the reason why we're using oil is so that when we take our ink and go over the section, because remember we're transforming this piece of paper into cloth. This is part of that distressed piece of paper, now getting ink on it, and it's becoming more and more like a batik. Okay, so as we are making this piece, we're going to be making alternating strips with graphic images and symbols and words. And the words that we've asked you to think about are words of solidarity. What does it mean to you? How are you in solidarity with your community, with your work, with your family? How are you supported? What are words that mean support for you, that have got you through the last couple of months over this time? And they can actually be words of emotional support, gratitude, things that you're feeling in the moment that give you strength to carry on, and words like share and support and gratitude. Those are the words that come from inside and form a base. Whereas there's another way of seeing it is that if you've got Wi-Fi, if you've got a laptop, if you've got network, you're actually in connection with your work community, with your school community. So think of words that mean something to you, that have meant things to you. Just jot them down on the piece of paper next to you while you're working. And we're going to make the strips with the words on first, and then Mandisa will take you into the symbols.
Right, before we start the activity, guys, what we want to do today is we want to create an art piece with some kind of message or meaning, and we want this process, as I've said before, to be a reflective process and thinking about the notion of radical solidarity and what that has really meant to you as an individual and also as part of a bigger community. So what I would like you to do just before we actually start the making process is to think about what this time of solidarity has meant to you. Perhaps there are words that come to mind when you think about solidarity. Perhaps there are people, perhaps there are groups, organizations, communities out there that have given you some support. Perhaps it's also about what you as an individual can give and what you can offer during this time of radical solidarity. So those are the things that we want to add into the work to create a piece that's meaningful for us today. Also, in relation to those words, we want to add other sorts of visual motifs into the piece to make it interesting, and you can do that in a variety of ways. The one way that you can do it is by adding symbols or signs that mean something to you. A symbol is a way of communicating an idea or a thought or a concept without actually writing words. I've got some Nguni symbol language which I like to use because of our context here of being in South Africa and that being one of the oldest communities in our country, represented by many of our official languages in the country. So I like using symbols, but you can use contemporary symbols as well, that mean peace, that mean togetherness, that mean connectedness, that mean support for particular people. So symbols are good, and the repetitiveness of symbols is what creates the pattern. You can also just create pattern which is celebratory, which is fun, which is positive, which is about you putting your positive mark in this moment, that we all share together, even though we are separated by distance.
The first material that Anatsui was drawn to was wooden food trays, which he sourced from local markets. He burned and carved versions of Adinkra symbols onto them. As a student, he had read books that claimed Africa didn't have art, or African art is not abstract. He saw Adinkra signs, which you clearly see people making attempt to encapsulate abstract ideas. That really opened his eyes, and he stayed with those signs for 5 years after he finished school. He then collected and worked with milk tin leads, turning them into big sheets about 2 meters long and 1 meter wide. He didn't find freedom in that form until he started working with bottle caps, which are much lighter, and you could create bigger and more versatile sheets. He kept discovering new things about the material. With the bottle caps, the story he's been telling is about the transatlantic trade. The link between America and Europe is very much part of what is behind his work with bottle caps. The closer you get to them, you see the names of alcohol drinks. These became items that were exchanged for humans who were transported to the Americas as slaves. The concept behind his large-scale pieces is a wall, that it's a human construct, and it is done to do many things like create a barrier between you and something. It protects you, and it deprives you of your freedom. Anytime he stands before his works, he feels the presence of all the people who made the tins, and he thinks of all his assistants, which gives them a spiritual dimension. Abdoulaye Konate's installations have their roots in his Malian homeland. He draws inspiration from nature, traditional societies, and from the costumes of Senufo musicians, a group of closely related peoples of northern Côte d'Ivoire, southern Mali, and western Burkina Faso. Their art inspired the 20th century European artists such as Pablo Picasso and Fernand Léger. The cubism and masks found in Senufo pieces were a significant influence for Picasso's African period. The term Senufo has become a category to art collectors and scholars, a symbolism for the artistic tradition of West Africa, starting with the early 20th century. All pieces of Senufo art are found in many leading museums in the world. Abdoulaye is a trained painter. He works in a painterly manner. He first sketches his ideas, and then his studio assistants begin to make the work to full scale. Everything is done on the floor, and then it progresses horizontally. He finishes his pieces by hand embroidering his signature, an element that adds to the painterly quality of his works. This technique he developed since the 90s. He started to work with textiles in 1991 when he started to work in big installations. He wanted people to be able to get into the space and touch things. He randomly came across fabric. With fabric, colors are already made, and with the craft in Mali, you can create colors. He then decided, why not paint on fabric? He buys this fabric directly from the dyers located next to his studio. He says that he uses textiles in the same way other artists use paint, steel, or marble. It is his color palette and medium for artistic expression.
In the end, this is what you would create, which is a fragment of a large collective tapestry.
So I've got my wax crayon and then we're transforming it into cloth. And as the ink dries, you could get that sort of batik approach. If you, let me choose some green, you can add over your original writing, you can redo the text. And because it's this laminated paper, or it's this glossy paper, it actually stays together pretty well. And as you finish your words, we then move on to our next piece of paper where we're going to be working on symbols with Liesel.
And then what I like to do, just to lift some of that ink, is I turn my inked piece over and I just absorb some of the ink. You can see the batik effect coming through the back of the paper, which is also rather lovely. So there's no reason why you actually can't use that paper as is, but that lifts the words a little bit. And then, as Richard says, you can go back over when your paper's a little drier, or even with some white pastel to make those words stand out. But when that ink is done, while that's drying, let me just show you this. On this piece, I'm working simply with black koki and with pattern and symbol, and it's just, again, that repetitive element that actually makes it very beautiful. So you can keep your patterns really very linear, or if you like, you can actually create areas again of contrast, alternating areas of contrast. Dark against light. And again, it's just taking your time. And you'll notice that even as you draw, that paper will move around and shift around, actually like a piece of cloth now, because it's being scrunched. And with the scrunching of the paper, you'll notice that you may also have ink that's come off on your hand from the ink that's printed on the paper. also the thing when you're making is to have a sort of visual conversation with your piece. So as you're creating, and you do what you think the piece is actually asking of you, so it's not a one-way process when one creates. It's actually allowing your work to speak back to you. Something really beautiful also just working in simple black and white and a limited color palette. If you look at Anatsui's work, it's often quite monochromatic, limited colors. Abdoulaye, of course, works with quite intense, bright color in some of his pieces. So different approaches by those two artists, making those monumentally sized wall hangings or tapestry-like pieces. I find working in pattern also becomes quite meditative. It's the repeat of that same element, which can be quite calming. And because I've used those colors in my inked piece, I may want to just choose a color from there and just pick that color up, maybe with a color koki. And koki works really well on this paper, especially when it's been scrumpled and scrunched, because the ink runs into those cracks very nicely. Right, and maybe a bit purple or blue. As I'm completing my words, you're probably looking at them and wondering what these words mean and what they are. And in the spirit of solidarity, what I thought was really important for me today was to honor our partners that we work with here in the Center for Arts Education. The Lalela Project, the Butterfly Art Project, the Peter Clark Art Center, Mbali Literacy Project, the Western Cape Education Department, and then also the Michaelis School of Fine Art. And we have other partners as well. But I wanted to use this moment to really kind of honor the work that we do with them and that we've actually done with them during this lockdown period, and how we've connected with them, how they have supported our work in what we do in the Center for Arts Education on a daily basis. So those are the people that I feel have supported us and that we support them in the work that we do in teacher training and also teaching children and adults.
So I've also added some touches of gold on my symbols just to highlight them. And I will slowly moving into the cutting of the strips. Where are my scissors? So if you remember earlier when we were doing the folding step, we had these 4 columns of strips that we have. So we're gonna start cutting on those lines. I will lay this out. All right, another finished one. I'm going to use 2. And we will soon be joining these together at the same time with Richard and Liesel.
So I'm adding my gold and silver on separate pieces of paper, also with the 4 columns, and kind of keeping that element of pattern and repeat pattern making. And the reason why we've decided to add this sort of gold or silver aspect is again to create that reference to the luster and the shine in Anatsui's work. And you need not only use, I'm using bits of sort of tin foil, which is gold on the one side and silver on the other. You can use any kind of material that is shiny and that has a luster to it, old sweet wrappers, the inside of chip packets, and the packaging around tea and coffee. They also come with quite a beautiful gold finish to them. So any of those materials sort of recycled one can use. You'll see when I'm sticking them down that one has to stick them down quite carefully, and that you're covering your whole piece of gold paper. I've just torn mine, but you will see from Mandisa, she carefully cut out her shapes which you wanted in her piece. So it really is up to you how you want to add that gold and silver element. You also needn't add it to a separate sheet. You can add it into your sheet with your words, or even into your sheet with your patterns, however you'd like to do that.
So this is the fun part where you, if you weren't having fun already, it's definitely going to start now. So you've got your two pieces of paper, the symbols on one and the words on the other. And so to mix it up, we're going to alternate words and patterns and start to weave the cloth together like that, like so. So you're now making an A3 size. And now to join them, you're just going to have them in the same order upside down, which itself is quite a lovely batik-y sort of look again. And here's where you take your masking tape, and the secret here is not to get it to move too much. So you stick a little bit in the middle just to join the pieces. They must overlap a little bit to hold together. Remember, we're not using rulers or anything, because it's got to have that sort of organic cloth look to itself as well. So we're putting all the little pieces over each other. And so this is the back of your cloth. And you're just fastening it just so that it doesn't move too much while you turn it over. So I'm getting a nice lane of sticky in the middle, and then I'm going to use large strips of tape to join the rest of the cloth together across the next sections. So you can go to hold them from behind, as it were, in a pattern, so that you can keep it all together like so. And we're going to join them together in one solidarity tapestry. wallpaper for your phone.
Oh, that's cool.
So please
Looks
take a
like-
photo of your individual piece, and we can stitch it digitally together, and we can join all of our pieces into one large virtual collage.
A virtual tapestry.
Is give Liesel all the pieces. We're going to put the table maybe in the middle.
Yeah, you can maybe bring them to my side.
Yeah, bring it
Yeah.
to Mandisa, and then we're going to join 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pieces.
We'll need 2 tables next to each other to accommodate the size. I'm just going to mix this one together.
Give me a second.
Oh, you shouldn't do it on the red carpet, just on the ground. Move
You
the
can-
table up.
We could do it on the carpet.
Yeah,
as
let's
well.
do it on
We
the
did it
carpet.
like that with the children on
Yes,
the floor. It was
yeah.
actually quite nice.
We just move this table
And then
up.
you can put our masks on if we're going to
Yes.
be closer to each other.
Ta-da! And then it just cut out these bits that are sticking out here to make it look neat. I think this is okay. Where's your one, Richard? I'll put it next to it.
Put them all in a pile here. Sweet. Okay.
Okay, let me
So I think we just start by randomly putting them down, and then you can take some.
Just watch the shadows.
Okay, so we have yellows, purples.
And what
Should we maybe? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. What you'll find with this project is that the children will make, or that you may have made configurations of 6 or 4 or 8. And so when you actually put it together, it has that organic feel as well. At the bottom.
So they won't necessarily make a perfect square.
Yeah. But that's good.
Maybe this one can go there, separate so like that. Yeah.
Top and then we'll pull this up a little bit.
Pull this up a little bit.
And this one this way. Yeah.
Except that those words are upside. Oh, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, this is so pretty. Let's come out.
Okay.
We're going to use the
I have some here.
big tape.
I have.
Plastic.
If you want, but it will then change the.
Here's one more.
Oh, there's one more.
Oh yeah, then that means
So I think it's.
Which shape?
Let's play around with the direction of the
That's nice, yeah.
so what's it?
with the direction of the strips. Maybe turn that one on
This one.
because then we may be able to put it. Yeah. Let's see how that works.
One that's the same
So
size.
it might.
Yeah, pull that one up a bit.
Yeah, if you
Pull
pull
that
this
one right
one
up.
up.
There we go.
right.
Those look too similar. I think they might be the same.
But I've changed the direction. of
Okay,
this one,
yes.
so
There we go.
So this one
maybe
is
it's bigger. Let's see what that one is.
So if we push, where does this one go? So if you pull here
Okay,
and this
we
one
can-
here, I think that's fine, right?
Yeah.
Just get these.
I quite like it.
I like it when it goes a little bit odd.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's nice.
Let's do that. And turn that one on.
Yeah.
This way?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to go that side then.
Right.
Okay.
You want it?
You just okay. You're gonna go for it with the.
Oh, maybe smaller ones first, just to have
Okay, I get it.
like. Okay.
Is it?
Check out that. Just, yeah.
Both sides.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Just so that it doesn't shift about. We can just masking tape it through. I think we can do the packaging tape now.
Oh, just some images. Artists in the studios collaborating
There
or
we go.
with their volunteers or this people that in the studio.
So you can do cutting. Fantastic. Let's do a second strip. Go right to the top a little bit. Yep. Okay.
You just do a quick check. You want
I
to
think
do
let's
some
do some
sideways?
Cross strip. Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely need your family and friends to chip in. We challenge you to make one that's bigger than this.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Wait.
Yeah, I just want to check that it's all connected. Okay. Right.
Turn from that side over to me.
Yeah.
To you.
Yes.
Okay. Here we go.
So social distance.
Fantastic. Oh, it looks good.
Right, guys, so we finished our paper tapestry inspired by Anatsui and also the artist Abdoulaye Konate. And the tapestry that you've seen is just the efforts of 3 people working over an hour or so. So you can make tapestries that are much larger than that. And again, this beautiful tapestry made by Sun Valley was made by a class of about 30 to 40 children. The size that we've made would basically represent the size of one table of children, and then because there were several tables together, we added all of those to make the bigger piece and to make the collective piece, which is a very exciting moment when all of those things come together. So please, if you would do, as Richard has kindly requested, to take a photograph of the piece that you've created, however small or however big, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we made this together this evening and that we have been connected in our making, which is a very, very powerful moment, I think, for people. So please send a copy of your fragment that you've made and we will digitally stitch them together and create something as beautiful or perhaps maybe even more beautiful than the one on the wall. And just to end off with, the way in which this is displayed is with these beautiful folds that give this 3-dimensional feel and texture to the piece, which we won't get in the digital version, but in reality, when you make them, they become really beautiful. And just to encourage you to continue with this process across the days that come, to continue to make, to continue to think and reflect, and perhaps even as an individual, you can make a piece as big as this. It's been wonderful to have you with us today. And please join our YouTube videos to see what we've done for children and for other audiences. We would love you to respond and to tell you how those are being received. So thank you very much. Thank you to Richard and Mandisa, who have been fabulous co-workers, and have a wonderful evening. Thanks.
That's a wrap. Thank you, Danny, for filming.